In this lecture, we will look at a recap of what we learned in this section of the course. There are three types of design patterns that the Gang of Four created. They are creational design patterns, structural design patterns, and behavioral design patterns. Creational design patterns are used to create objects. Structural design patterns define the relationships between objects. Behavioral design patterns help to define how objects interact. The creational design patterns we learned about are abstract factory, builder, factory method, prototype, and singleton. The abstract factory design pattern allows us to create related objects without specifying their concrete classes. The builder design pattern separates the construction of an object from the representation of an object. The factory method design pattern defines an interface for creating an object, but lets subclasses decide which class to instantiate. The prototype design pattern allows us to create a fully initialized instance of an object that can be copied or cloned. The singleton design pattern lets us create a class that can only ever have one single instance living at a time in the program. It ensures that a class only has one instance and gives us a global point of access to it. The structural design patterns we learned about are adapter, bridge, composite, decorator, facade, flyweight, and proxy. The adapter design pattern lets classes that normally couldn't work together because of incompatible interfaces work together by matching interfaces of different classes. The bridge design pattern separates an object's interface from its implementation. The composite design pattern lets us compose objects into tree structures. It allows clients to treat individual objects as well as compositions of objects uniformly. The decorator design pattern lets us add responsibilities to an object dynamically and provides us a flexible alternative to subclassing. The facade design pattern gives us a high-level interface that makes a subsystem easier to use. The flyweight design pattern uses sharing to support large numbers of fine-grained objects efficiently. The proxy design pattern lets an object represent another object. It gives us a placeholder for another object to control access to it. The behavioral design patterns that we learned about are chain of responsibility, command, interpreter, iterator, mediator, memento, observer, state, strategy, template method, and visitor. The chain of responsibility design pattern is a way of passing a request between several objects. The command design pattern allows us to encapsulate a request as an object, making it possible to parameterize clients with different requests. The interpreter design pattern defines a grammatical representation for a language and provides an interpreter to deal with this grammar. The iterator design pattern allows us to sequentially access the elements of a collection. The mediator design pattern lets us simplify communication between classes by giving us a middleman to communicate and promoting loose coupling by removing the need for classes to reference each other explicitly. The memento design pattern allows us to capture and restore an object's internal state. The observer design pattern allows us to notify several classes when there has been a change. The state design pattern lets us alter an object's behavior when its state changes. The strategy design pattern lets us encapsulate an algorithm inside of a class. The template design pattern lets subclasses redefine certain steps of an algorithm without changing the structure of the algorithm. The visitor design pattern allows us to define a new operation for a class without changing the classes of the elements on which it operates.